The Spiral of Becoming. In the stark New Mexican desert of 1963, where atomic secrets had once been forged into weapons of unprecedented power, Stanisław Ulam found himself adrift in a different kind of wilderness. The Polish mathematician who had helped birth the atomic bomb was now recovering from a severe bout of encephalitis that had left his brilliant mind altered, not diminished, but transformed, as if the neural pathways had been rerouted through unfamiliar territories of thought. The illness had struck 3 years prior, necessitating brain surgery that left him with a stubborn fear that his mathematical prowess, the very essence of his intellectual being, might have been irrevocably damaged. Yet in the strange aftermath of recovery, he discovered not limitation but a new perspective, a slight tilt of mental vision that would reveal patterns invisible to his former self. On that particular afternoon, trapped in the tedium of a scientific conference, Ulam's mind wandered. He had always possessed what colleagues called a Hungarian approach to mathematics, intuitive rather than formal, visual rather than purely symbolic. Now, as speakers droned on about theorems and proofs, his pen began to move almost unconsciously across a sheet of grid paper. 1. He placed it at the center. 2. Adjacent. 3. He turned, continuing the path. 4. 5. 6. A spiral formed beneath his hand, numbers arranged in concentric squares, expanding outward like ripples in still water. A child's exercise, perhaps. But as the spiral grew, something extraordinary emerged. The prime numbers, those indivisible atoms of mathematics, revealed themselves not as random occurrences but as patterns, diagonal lines and ordered structures previously unseen. He offered no explanation, only continued to fill the page with numbers, tracing the expanding spiral with growing excitement. Ulam had always maintained an unusual relationship with numbers. Unlike many mathematicians who saw them as abstract tools, he perceived them as entities with almost sentient qualities, not alive, certainly, but possessing characteristics that, when properly arranged, revealed hidden truths about existence itself. It was a materialist mysticism, a secular enchantment with the universe's inherent structure. Later that evening, in his sparsely furnished office at Los Alamos, he extended the spiral further. The primes continued their dance across the grid, forming patterns that defied conventional understanding. What began as idle curiosity now commanded his full attention. Was this merely a mathematical curiosity, or something more profound? "What are you saying?" he murmured to the spiral, not expecting an answer, but feeling nonetheless that he was engaged in a dialogue with something ancient and fundamental. Ulam's mind drifted to another concept he had articulated years earlier, what would later be called the singularity. In conversation with his colleague John von Neumann, he had proposed that the accelerating progress of technology suggested an approaching point of convergence, a mathematical singularity in human history where the old rules would cease to apply. "One conversation with von Neumann," he often recalled, "is worth a month of thinking on my own." Now, staring at his spiral, he sensed a connection. Both the spiral and the singularity contain the same essential truth: patterns emerging from chaos, order manifesting from apparent randomness when viewed from the proper perspective. Both suggested an underlying structure to reality that transcended human perception. The following day, Ulam sought out computer time on the laboratory's Maniac 2, a machine he had helped conceptualize years earlier. With the assistance of Myron Stein and Mark Wells, they programmed the computer to extend the spiral to 100,000 points, far beyond what human hands could reasonably accomplish. As the printouts emerged, Ulam felt a strange vertigo. The patterns held at scale. The primes continued their organized march across the grid. Something fundamental was revealing itself, not through mystical revelation, but through the cold, precise language of mathematics. Mathematics, he later wrote in his memoir Adventures of a Mathematician, has a front and a back. The front is the answer and the back is the working. In the end, the answer is the simple part. The working is the journey, and the journey is where the truths hide. In the decades that followed, Ulam never made extravagant claims about his spiral. He published a brief paper, mentioned it occasionally in lectures, but left its deeper significance largely unexplored. Perhaps he understood that some discoveries are meant to be contemplated rather than exploited, doorways to perception rather than tools for immediate application. The Ulam spiral, as it came to be known, remained a curiosity in mathematical circles, interesting but not revolutionary, enchanting but not earth-shattering. Yet for those with eyes to see, it represented something profound, the universe thinking through numbers, reality revealing its skeletal structure through the simplest of patterns. Years later, as Ulam's health declined, his brilliant mind still active but housed in an increasingly frail body, he would sometimes sketch the spiral from memory, beginning with one at the center and working outward. Each time, the primes would emerge in their diagonal processions, as if responding to some unheard music. "We are approaching the singularity," he told a colleague while visiting IBM labs in 1984, months before his death. "Not just technologically, but mathematically. Reality is becoming more transparent to those who know how to look." Benoit Mandelbrot nodded politely, assuming disease had made the great Ulam philosophical. But Ulam wasn't being philosophical. He was being precise. The spiral and the singularity were twin manifestations of the same truth, that beneath apparent complexity lies simplicity, that order emerges from chaos when viewed at the proper scale and from the proper angle. Stanisław Ulam died on May 13, 1984, in Santa Fe, New Mexico. He left behind a legacy of contributions to mathematics, computer science, and nuclear physics. But perhaps his greatest gift was the spiral, that simple arrangement of numbers that continues to whisper its strange truths to those willing to listen. In the decades since, as computing power has grown exponentially, moving precisely along the curve Ulam had predicted would lead to the singularity, mathematicians have extended the spiral to millions of points. The patterns remain, stubbornly persistent, neither fully explained nor dismissed. Like the universe itself, the spiral offers no final answers, only an invitation to deeper questions. And sometimes, in the quiet of night, when the boundaries between mind and mathematics grow thin, one might imagine Ulam still plotting points on his eternal spiral, not as a ghost, for he believed in no afterlife, but as a pattern of thought that, once discovered, cannot be undone. A secular immortality, written in the language of prime numbers, spiraling outward toward infinity.